The problem is that when our stress system is activated, it closes down the CEO of our brain. I talk a lot about our brain as like a giant company. So just like the leaders listening to this, your job isn't to do the jobs of every person in every department, but it's to oversee that they're being done effectively and mission driven and productively. Our thalamus is like our data manager. And Harold's job is to talk to my vagus nerve all the time. So the vagus nerve is the largest nerve in the human body. 80% of the traffic in our brain we don't know about. It's unconscious messaging. Harold sends the report to Bob, and Bob decides, okay, are we in danger? And if we're just a little bit in danger, he taps the panic button and a message goes immediately to the CEO's office that says, hey, Harold and I aren't sure how to respond to this, so we need you to weigh in. And that's what you want. Bob and Harold are directing your actions, and you're not reasoning through them or using logic. If you have those moments a lot, the chances are then Bob is sending your CEO out for coffee. So that's one way that you can notice that. Self-control and happiness does not happen without self-awareness. So self-awareness is first.
Hello, it's your leadership coach, Estelle Reed, and host of Optimizing Leader Brilliance, the place for calm, confident, and strategic leadership. Stay tuned to the end for a mini coaching and reflective practice. Find out more about my services by heading over to estellereed.com. Joining us today is Dr. Lisa Riegel, a leading expert in the neuroscience of engagement and sustainable change. As the CEO of Educational Partnerships Institute and founder of Jacopar, Lisa has spent over 25 years helping leaders turn human behaviour into measurable action. She's the author of NeuroWell and creator of the 8C commitment framework. Beyond her professional accolades, Lisa is a mother of two who earned a PhD while raising her children, an achievement she holds most dear. A firm believer that growth should be joyful, and her life motto is simply just say yes. Welcome everyone. I've got Dr. Lisa Riegel here with us, who's a leadership strategist, author, speaker. I'm really looking forward to diving in with you, Lisa, because I was saying earlier that we have a lot of leaders that listen to this podcast, and certainly from a strategy perspective. And we were chatting earlier about culture change and all that kind of thing. So to get a sense of who you are and what you do for a living, what does your typical day look like?
Every day is different. So I do keynotes, I do leadership seminars and workshops. Sometimes I do leadership coaching, so I'll be on Zoom meetings with various leaders that I'm working with. And then I usually take about 4 or 5 organizations each year that are truly ready for transformative change, that really want to dig in and do the work. And then I will be really embedded with them. So I'm either on the road or I'm at my computer on Zoom all day long.
As part of that day, do you have any non-negotiable kind of routines or anchors? What keeps you, to use your term, neuro well?
Yeah.
Oh,
I
come on.
start every day with, and when I wake up, instead of just jumping out of bed and getting right to it, I start every day with, I call it my 2 minutes of joy. And I lay in bed with my eyes closed. And for me, it's the beach. I'm a beach person. I love everything about it. And I just close my eyes. And for me, I visualize Maui. We went to Maui and it was the most beautiful beach I've ever been to. And I just visualize it and I feel my body relax and I feel that sense of peace and calm. And I think we spend a lot of time, we know what we feel like when we're anxious or when we're stressed or angry, but we don't make as much of a mental connection to what our body feels like when we're happy. And so I try to stop and reflect on that every morning, and it just sets my day in the right way. And then periodically through the day, I used to have a self-care routine where I would set a timer on my phone. So every half hour or so, I would just look up, stand up, stretch my neck, rub a little bit, do some vagal nerve, take a couple breaths, and then sit back down and get back to work. And what I found was that just being able to do that and to relax my body a little bit helped me stay focused and more productive. And then eventually I didn't need the timer. So now it's every half hour. my body wants to just stretch and take a deep breath.
Tell us more about the vagal nerve. I keep meaning to do more research around this. And so, yeah, I'd love to hear about that. Tell us.
Sure. So I think that the key is that when we're stressed, and sometimes we don't even know it, you'll sit down at the end of the night and you're like, oh my gosh, my neck is sore, and you just don't even realize how much stress you're carrying. And the problem is that when our stress system is activated, it closes down the CEO of our brain. So I talk a lot about our brain as like a giant company. So just like the leaders listening to this, your job isn't to do the jobs of every person in every department, but it's to oversee that they're being done effectively and mission driven and productively. Our thalamus is like our data manager. And Harold's job is to talk to my vagus nerve all the time. So the vagus nerve is the largest nerve in the human body. It runs down the sides of your neck, and then there's a bundle around your heart and your stomach, and then it connects to everything. And its job is to say, is your heart beating okay? Is your stomach emptying, your bowels working, or all blood pumping, everything like systems wise a go? And then its other job is to figure out where your body is in space. Because if you were standing right next to a cliff, it needs to send some stress signals to your brain to get off the dangerous cliff. So that vagus nerve is constantly monitoring our systems, and we don't move enough as humans, and so we tend to have low proprioceptive input, which is that kind of where are we in space. And so that agitates our vagus nerve, so it's always sending Harold messages of we could be in danger, which elevates our baseline stress. It's fragmented and stored in all different parts of our brain. So Harold only has access to sensory memories, and all of this is happening in our unconscious brain. So 80% of the traffic in our brain we don't know about. It's unconscious messaging going on. Harold then says, okay, what's going on right now here? What does that remind me of? Because if every experience was novel, our brain would explode because it'd be too hard to manage. So we look for these patterns and associations. So he creates these associations and says, okay, this is like that. And he sends a report to Bob. Bob is our amygdala, Bob's our security manager. So Harold sends the report to Bob, and Bob decides, okay, are we in danger? And if we're just a little bit in danger, he taps the panic button, and a message goes immediately to the CEO's office that says, hey, Harold and I aren't sure how to respond to this, so we need you to weigh in. And that's what you want. You want self control and self awareness. If Bob decides that we're in big trouble and hits the panic button, then the message goes up here to the CEO and says, hey, fire alarm, go get a cup of coffee at Panera. We'll call you when everything's safe and you can come back. And at that point, Bob and Harold are directing your actions, and you're not reasoning through them or using logic. So keeping that vagus nerve calm and building some self-awareness about what are the fears and what are the associations that Harold makes in our brain can give us so much more self-awareness and self-regulation. And ultimately, what that means is we can have self-control. So a couple things, some of the things you can do that are super easy is just rub behind your ears. That's where that nerve starts. You can stretch your neck to the right and left. Humming massages that vagus nerve. And the other thing is taking a moment to be thoughtful about where things are in space. Wiggle your toes and pay attention to your toes, or squeeze your fingers together like this, and that tells your brain, here, that's where your fingers are. And then your body, whatever the furthest point out, it will map the rest of your body. So that tells your vagus nerve, if my toes are there, then I know where my legs are and we're safe. And so some of those just vagal nerve exercises periodically let your vagus nerve know we're good, we're fine. You don't have to tell Harold to panic. And so if there are things in the environment that are a little bit sketchy and we're not sure how to respond, we're not already elevated.
What might that look like? How might we recognize that either in ourselves or in maybe a team member?
Sure. So I think the first thing is, how many times do you have a moment where you do something and later on you're like, why did I do that? I don't even believe that. Why did I say that or act that way? That's not who I am. If you have those moments a lot, the chances are then Bob is sending your CEO out for coffee. So that's one way that you can notice that. The other is if you find that if you're dealing with somebody, I always use the example in business, say that you and I are in business together and you give me feedback. Maybe I have an association between receiving feedback and feeling like I failed. and I'm a loser and I'm not smart enough or good enough or whatever, those kind of underlying fears, then when you give me feedback, my body starts to dysregulate right away before I think about it. Even though logically I know you're supposed to be giving me feedback, my little 8-year-old brain put time and worth and love as an association, which is a faulty association. But for many years, all the way into my 20s and early 30s, if my husband was running late, I would be angry and anxious about it. And sometimes to the point where like I just could not calm down to have a good time. And so what I had to do once I had that self-awareness that Harold's using this association that's faulty, now me as the CEO, I can say to Harold, "Hey, this is not that. Don't pull that filter out. Don't use that to create a perception of what's going on in my environment." And now I don't like to be late, but it doesn't dysregulate my body. So I think if you are a person who is quick to anger, and then later on you're like, I don't know if I overreacted, that's an example of you need to get your CEO back in the office and teach Bob just to tap the button and not to wail on it.
Yeah. And so what we've got going on here then is we've got some physical strategies. So massaging neck, being aware of toes, fingers. And then we've also got, and so is the idea that we calm our vagus nerve down first, which then will enable our CEO to come back or come back from the coffee shop.
And
Yeah.
one way to uncover what are your underlying fears, because the other thing too is people tend to think the past is in the past, I'm over it. You're never over it because, Harold, those associations that get stored in that sensory memory bank, they don't go away. So the solution to pollution is dilution. So if you have a lot of negative filters in your sensory memory bank, the way to combat those to make it so that Bob just taps the button is positivity. So it's creating positive experiences, positive context. So another activity that's really good for your state of mind is at dinner time, if you're married or if you go out with friends or whatever, or if you don't have anybody that's a significant other, just even journaling, stop and write down 2 good things that happened that day. And write down one thing that you love about yourself and write down, put those things in Harold's mind to say, hey, Harold, all these good things are happening today. I want you to pay attention to good things. And it's interesting, there was a study done where they had participants watch somebody shooting a basketball and they had to count how many times they made a basket. And then they would turn the video off and ask the person how many baskets, and they would tell them. And they'd say, "Did you happen to see the giant gorilla that walked across the have you seen that video?" And so many people don't see it. And the reason they don't see it is because their Herald is primed to count the baskets. So we have a lot of really beautiful, positive, wonderful gorillas walking around in our life that we don't even notice. So
Yeah.
being a little bit more intentional about finding those positive things can help to create more positivity in that sensory memory bank. Work behavior, social behavior, all behavior is the intersection of our biology and our context. And so, if we understand our biology, we can gain that self awareness, self regulation, and self control. And ultimately, we can shape our context. Bad things happen sometimes, but what are we focusing on? Because if we
Yeah.
focus on the bad things, we're cementing a negative association. Where if we look for the positive things, we're creating positive associations in the face of adversity.
And I love the fact that you talk about priming. We're priming the brain to look for our positive gorillas. Love
Yeah.
all the metaphor stuff as well. And we talk the same language. I'm a big journaler. I'm big into helping people with their past that's been triggered in their present, just as I was working with a leader today. And she had one of those Bob and Harold moments. The button had been pressed. And so it's absolutely fascinating. But I think it's great that we've got a metaphor that we can hook onto. How do you get to that? What in the distant past became important to you? What's in your origin story that has led you to this point where you like to do that with people?
Yeah. So when I was 25 years old, I had graduated from college and I'd worked in a sales job and then it was like a tech sales job. And then another company purchased it. So then I got another job. So I'd had a series of jobs selling different things. And I was selling automatic greasing systems for semis and off-road construction equipment, which is very not at all aligned with my history or anything else. But By all metrics, I was killing it. I was the only female salesperson in the world for this company. All the rest of the
Wow.
females were in secretarial roles and things. And so I was killing it. I was making a ton of money. I had a car, I had my house, everything was going great, and I was miserable. And I was like, you know what? I don't like this path that I'm on. It's not my path. I was on somebody else's path, what my parents thought I should do or everybody else's expectations. And I also had this expectation that there's one road to happiness and we're all racing on the same road. And so I had to get ahead. And what I started to realize is that I don't have to take that road. I can do whatever I want. And so I quit my job. I called off my wedding because I was also engaged to somebody that I decided I didn't want to be married to.
Can you do a little thing to help me out? And that's to simply hit subscribe or the follow button now, wherever it is that you're listening. So that's maybe on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple, because that will help the podcast get found by other people. And that then enables us to keep going because we continue to keep growing. What would be 5-star amazing though is if you could also leave a review. I really appreciate it. Thanks for your support.
And I put on a backpack and went to Florida and went to the beach, where's my happy place. And I just walked around for a couple weeks and I was like, you know what? It's easy to say, I want to be happy. And it's also not hard to do, but you have to be intentional and repetitive, and you have to gain this self-awareness and self-control in your brain to do it. And so that started me on a journey of my own self-discovery. And then I came back and I was like, I want to help people. I want to work with people to help them not feel the way I had felt and to help them feel like they're in control. I feel like a lot of people are walking around in the world feeling like the world's doing unto them and they don't have control. And that leads to anxiety and stress. And the reality is, you can flip that around and you can gain a much stronger sense of control, even if you can't control what's happening. So that really started my journey in helping people. And I taught kids. I was a teacher for 9 years, and then I was an administrator for a while. And then when I did my doctoral work, I was focused on leadership, but I was more interested in the human system, not the policies and org theory stuff. And then I taught at Ohio State in their leadership program, and I realized we just don't teach leaders about the people. And so I've been able to go in and help them start to rethink what they see in their staff and then how do they become the leader that staff needs to feel safe and supported and ready to be productive. So generally, I use what I call the 8C commitment framework. And this is a framework that just emerged over many years of working in organizations. And what I started to realize is that leaders can be very strong in one aspect of their leadership and very weak in other aspects. And so the 8C kind of looks at the whole system. So it starts with culture. And culture is not words, culture is action. And I see companies spend thousands of dollars on posters and murals and t-shirts and tchotchkes and all these other things. But the reality is their policies and their practices and the daily life of the people that work there, their experience is not aligned with those words. And so how do we translate the values that we have so that we put them into the routines, the way that we do employee recognition, the way that we collaborate, all of that. So there's a section on how to build that foundation. Once you have that foundation, then the next 3 C's are planning C's. So it's about clarity, coherence, and cadence. Clarity, it's amazing to me how many leaders, when I ask them, what are you trying to accomplish? They cannot describe it in operational terms. They can only give me a conceptual or aspirational idea of what they want to see. I want my teams to be stronger. Or I've worked with a couple leaders that said, I want to break down silos and have more cross work. And I'm like, what do you see in here if that's happening? And then they can't answer that. And if they can't answer that, then it's not going to happen. The coherence piece is that if you think about a new, say you're implementing a new software system, but you have another software system that does something similar, now you've got two things that are competing. And then the cadence piece is really that change is scary. And in the book, I talk about some of the stats around AI right now. And I read somewhere that 60% of the jobs in the next 10 years, not new jobs, but all jobs, 60% of them don't exist today. And that's really terrifying. And especially if you're a mid-career person who has a sense of identity of being an expert or being knowledgeable or all the work that you've put in to get to where you are. And all of that knowledge may become completely irrelevant, or you feel that way. And then now all of a sudden that challenges your identity. So that coherence of like, how fast can we make change and how do we support the resistance to change in a brain-based way? So those are the planning C's. Then there's two engagement C's. There's the collaboration and coaching. And I see a lot of, I'll hear a leader say, my team hates meetings. And what I hear is, I don't run effective meetings, because people don't dislike meetings. They dislike dumb meetings, right?
So
So there's a whole section on like, how do we make meetings purposeful? And again, if you're not clear about what you're trying to do, you're going to have a dumb meeting. And then
yeah.
the coaching piece of just even the example that I was using earlier about feedback. What happens oftentimes for leaders is you'll have staff member come with a problem, but if we only look at the surface level of what happened, we try to solve that problem. So we might be like, hey, you need to not give her feedback on this, or that's not going to solve the problem. It's the underlying, what's the fear beneath that problem, and how do I address that person so that I don't set off alarm bells for Harold and Bob? And getting to understand them and build that kind of relationship and trust. That's the integral part that I think is oftentimes missing. And then there's two C's around sustainability, and one is celebration and the other is communication. And the celebration piece is the piece that I see that companies do the worst. They'll, oh, thanks for being here for 5 years. But true, authentic celebration that serves to build collective efficacy in a staff requires that the celebration is directly aligned with your theory of change or your vision for change. And so then it becomes authentic and not just, if it's like we're doing an appreciation lunch and I can be like, yeah, but Betty down the hall doesn't deserve it. She doesn't do anything. And so then now it's not really authentic. They just bought us lunch and we all like the lunch. Thank you very much. But it's not going to serve to make me a more efficient or productive employee.
So you said something earlier. First of all, tell us what's the name of your book.
It's Aspirations to Operations, and it's a leader's guide to making transformation stick.
Great. And so you were saying earlier, so in terms of achieving cadence, doing it in a brain-based way. So give us an example of that. What does that look like?
So I think what I have leaders do an aptitude attitude matrix. And so they divide their staff based on, okay, this change that I'm looking for, do these people have the aptitude to do it? So is it just a matter of will or is it a matter of skill? What's their aptitude? And then what's their willingness to change? And you end up with 4 quadrants. And I always use the example of, in fact, a great book. It's called The Boys on the Boat. It's a book about the 1940s crew team that won the gold medal in the Olympics and US team. And they talk in there, they're a crew team, and they talk about when you're on the boat, that a successful crew team, everybody is in such sync and they all do different, like you look at them, if you don't know crew team, you just see people rowing, but like they all have a different role. But when they start to row together where it becomes like one organism, they get what's called swing. And swing, they can row slower and go faster. And so they've done studies on companies, and what you'll find is you have in a company, if say 10 people on the crew boat representing your company, 2 or maybe 3 of them are rowing like crazy in the right direction. 5 are staring at the scenery, periodically sticking their oar in, and then sometimes rowing okay, sometimes rowing and catching a crawl, right? And then you'll have 2 to 3 people actively trying to sink the boat. And so when you do the aptitude attitude matrix, you can start to say, okay, who's my coalition of the willing? Who are my rowers? Who are my sightseers? And are they sightseers because they don't know how? That's train them, right? Or are they sightseers because they don't want to? Sometimes we don't want to because we don't know how, and then we start to feel like we're not a good employee. So figuring out that root cause and the way that we coach them is different depending on what quadrant they're in. And the way that we set up collaborative practices, you have to think about those people and where they sit on the boat.
And so what is the different way that you would coach them for those 4 different quadrants?
So the ones that are the coalition of the willing, you get out of their way and let them run and let them do their thing. And you celebrate their work all the time in very authentic ways. You're like, hey, Judy did this. This is aligned with what we're doing. Judy, tell us how you did it so that she has a chance to do some peer to peer. Yeah, I was nervous at first, but then I figured this out and this worked. And so you start to get some peer to peer teaching. You can also set them up as a mentor or a coach for other folks who are in the I'm willing, but I'm not able, because those people are going to be active learners. If you put them with the I'm able, but I'm not willing. The people who are in the boat sinking category, those folks, sometimes we have to have a difficult conversation that says, hey, this is the direction that we're going. And so get on the boat or don't get on the boat, but it's not changing. There's also in the book a protocol for how to make collaborative decision making. And if you've used that and gone through the collaborative decision making process that leads to consensus, you shouldn't have a boat sinker because they had to agree to the change. And so figuring out how to do some of that collaborative decision making, knowing that some things I don't have the authority to decide. So here's the non-negotiables. Within these non-negotiables, we have a lot of flexibility of what we want to do. The other thing that you find a lot of times is people who are not willing and not able, that we would first think are your boat sinkers, are actually not your boat sinkers. They're terrified of being failures and they don't understand what you're asking because you haven't been clear, or they don't believe they can do it. Maybe they don't feel comfortable with it, or it's challenging their identity as a local expert within the company. So sometimes it's a matter of getting in there to figure out, is this really a fear-based unwillingness to participate, or is this truly somebody who needs to be counseled to find somewhere else to go?
If you're a leader listening to this, what would be an example of tackling an issue in a brain-based way? What would you
So I think
recommend?
when you're coaching, getting your staff to like saying, okay, so what is it that's making you so stressed? And then asking the question, why? Why do you think it stresses you out so much for this? Because then you start to get to the underlying root fear of, I fear, I'm worried I'm going to disappoint you, or I'm worried. Most of our fears come down to social fears or personal, I'm not good enough, or I'm going to be outed as a failure or an imposter or whatever. Thinking of how do we coach not the what is happening, but really get down to the people level. And that can help with conflict resolution and collaboration. The other thing I think is great, and I've done with leaders, is there's some activities in the book on how to identify your stress triggers. Do them with your teams. And then there's a process that I've done, and this is really funny. I did this with a team of teachers, and it's called Name It, Own It, Control It. And so the name it is understanding there's three questions. It's what's your body feel like when you're stressed or angry or anxious? What does your body look like? And what is your brain telling you? Not what are you thinking, because remember, Harold and Bob are telling you things, and that's all that thinking's done without you being conscious of it. And it was funny, this one lady, she's, I don't know what I look like when I'm stressed. And her teaching partner was like, I do. She said, your eyebrows disappear up into your bangs. And she was like, really? And she was like, yeah. So they started to have some conversations to normalize the idea of stress and that we all experience it. And then they were able, and so then when they're collaborating, I said, okay, so now if you're in a team meeting and you see her skin go blotchy and you see her eyebrows disappear, it's time to stand up and take a break. So the first column is the name it column of like, how do you experience? Then there's what can I do to calm myself down? And that's helping people recognize some of those vagal nerve things, or like, how do I relax myself when I'm in that state? And then the third and fourth columns are really important. It's what should my colleagues do? What should my colleagues not do? Because
Mm.
sometimes we want to help and we come in and start talking and we just escalate the situation. Or somebody just needs somebody to let them vent for a minute and we go in and try to solve the problem and we just make them more stressed. Addressing the human side of work, and that we all need to feel a sense of belonging. So there's a lot of strategies in there on how do we build a sense of belonging, because if you walk in a meeting and you go, oh, these are not my people, then your body gets stressed. But if you walk in and you're like, these are my people, then you're open and ready to collaborate. So starting with that sense of belonging and then humanizing the experience of stress and giving your employees a culture where it's okay to be stressed and say, you know what, I just need a minute. And nobody's, oh, she stormed out of here. It's like everybody has those moments and it's okay. And we even started something called fizzy or flat. So if you think of like a can of soda, we're all like cans of soda, we're carbonated, but I can't see in your can and you can't see in mine. So if I walk into a meeting or you and I need to work on something, I can just say, I am so fizzy right now. And you're going to give me a little grace and space before we dive right in, just to take a couple breaths and calm down. Do you need to talk, or do you want me to help you figure something out, or do you just need a minute? And then now I'm ready to go from a brain perspective when we start our work. Or maybe I come in and I'm like, man, I'm just flat today. I just am bleh. And then same kind of thing. Do you need to talk about it? Do you want a few minutes, or how can we get you to just perfectly carbonated?
This is such a mature way to lead because how much do we just ignore? We have neurodiversity in our family, and so we have learnt we're not using the terms fizzy or flat, but I think that would be really cool. But I
Yeah.
hadn't thought about then adopting those strategies in business.
So one of the things that I've done with a few businesses, we call Punch It Up is the name of it. And basically you create a punch card and it has lots of different activities on it. And if employees participate, they get a punch. And then if they get 5 punches, they get company swag or a free lunch or whatever. And the activities that you do are like morning happy hours. So you bring in donuts and coffee or pastries or something. But the rule is if you come to the morning happy hour, you're not allowed to talk about work. So it might be like, today our focus is on pets. We're going to talk about our pets from our history. And what happens is I start to make connections with people on a human level. And those connections then make me see you as a human when we're working together versus just, oh, the lady from the data department or the lady. So having opportunities like that, and you just start to build these little human connections between people. And what you find is that they smile more, they say hello to each other more. And there was a company that called me in to consult, and they were saying that their culture was a mess. And at the end of the day, after all this discovery and everything else, what it came down to is people were literally sitting in cubbies next to each other and using Slack to communicate, where they could literally lean their chair back, turn, and talk to the person. But we became so separated over COVID that people lost that kind of social engagement structure in work. Like the water cooler is important at work. And so
Yes.
having some of this, we had a lady too, like one of the punch it up things was she taught yoga on the weekends. And she's, I'll stay after work one day a week and do yoga. And so people would go to yoga and they're like, let us pay you. They gave her like $5 here. And she would do yoga. But it was again a chance for people to connect as humans and start to be more empathetic and kind with each other so that if somebody was having a bad day, we didn't fall into all the faulty assumptions.
Yeah. It's simple but impactful, isn't it?
Yeah, and
And
that's what I was saying before. It's not hard to be happy, but it's you got to
yeah,
be intentional and strategic about developing a context that will help you be happy. And I think
yes.
sometimes we just think that happiness is out there and fulfillment is out there and it's going to have to come to me versus I'm going to go and get it.
Yes, it's like one of my high points of my day, looking at the mountains. That for me is, but that is intentional happiness. Sitting on my swing seat, going out for dinner with my family, those types of things. So, what's your thing? How do you intentionally make yourself happy?
I do some of the self-care stuff on a daily basis. The other thing is my husband and I talk a lot. We do sit in front of the TV a lot too. But we really make an effort to talk and to talk about how we're feeling and to tell each other that we're proud and that we love each other and verbalizing those things. Tell them you appreciate them. So we make sure we hug each other every day. He knows that I love him every day. We do that kind of stuff. And then the other thing I do is golf. That's my happy spot. I go out and I enjoy the weather, and I'm not somebody who gets like angry if I'm golfing poorly because it's a recreation for me and not like an occupation.
And that's the key, isn't it? Making space and time. Otherwise,
It, yep,
before
it's
you
the
know it, you're in
intention.
your, yes,
Mhm.
that's it.
Yep,
I loved one, I something on your website. Your life motto is just say yes.
yep.
So, what does it mean for you, and where does that come from?
I think for me, it comes from I'm getting older and I'm realizing you spend your early years. I always laugh. You spend your 20s trying to figure out who you are. And then if you have kids, you spend your 30s wiping. You're wiping faces, wiping counters, wiping rear ends. You're wiping. And that's what you do for 10 years and driving them around. And then when you get to your 40s, you start to look forward and say, who am I? Where am I going? What am I doing? And so my husband and I have always been very like we have to save for retirement. We've been very conservative about making sure we're following the right pathway. And I was like, you know what? Let's just say yes. Let's go spend some of our money. Let's go have those experiences because at the end of the day, that's what makes life worthwhile are the experiences that you have and the joys that you feel. And so we just started saying yes. So we're going sailing for 10 days in May. I went and visited some friends from high school in Salt Lake, and people call and be like, "Hey, what are you doing tonight?" And I'm like, "Whatever you tell me to do, let's go." And so it's just been just say yes. I don't overthink it, and it's been fun. And so I
That's
do the same thing with
great.
businesses. You need some help? Okay, I'll help you. I don't know exactly what we're getting into, but let's do it. And it's just made life really fun. And we have every month we have something to look forward to. And it doesn't always have to be like expensive vacations. It can be little things too.
Yeah, what a great tip.
But yeah,
Yeah,
that's how I'm going to live my life. Because I feel like because I'm in my early 50s. And so I'm like, I might have 15 years of where I want to do this stuff. And so then there I am with the means to do it and no will to do it. So I'm like, let's do it now. And you're never guaranteed tomorrow. So we might as well make sure we make every little bit of today count.
yeah, there is something about your 50s, isn't there? And
I
I
think you
that
realize you're over that hill, right? Like you start to realize, wow, I've lived half my life and that went fast. And like I've got to jam pack some fun stuff in here before my hip goes out. Or my husband and I laugh that we know we're getting old because we can injure ourselves sleeping.
so we have a tradition. Previous guests leave a question for future guests, and Ginny Preem left this question for you. She said, "What is it that you've been hanging on to that's not serving you any longer that you're ready to let go of and unsubscribe from?"
I think it goes with aging. It's like I am ready to get rid of the idea that you have to always look like you're 25 years old. Like embracing myself as an aging person. I don't think I look like a hag or anything, but you're so critical. You look in the mirror and it's like, where did that wrinkle come from? Or, oh my gosh, I didn't have that spot yesterday. What happened? And you get obsessive about it and you start to feel like you're not as interesting anymore, or just you just make you feel old. And so I'm determined to be the old person who never gets old, who's just fun all the way through.
I love that. That is such a great attitude. And again, I can totally relate to that. If I said to you, I coloured in my grey hairs before
Yeah.
I've got my hairdresser coming tonight, and I thought, God, I look old.
Yeah, but I feel like we live in a society where it's like it's not okay to just age naturally. And you look at some of the stuff that people do to their faces and they don't even look like themselves anymore. So I really resist the urge to start trying to nip and tuck and
Yes,
Botox and things like that because I'm like, you know what? I am where I am. It's all okay.
yes. Yeah. Oh, there has been so many gems. Thank you so much, Lisa. I am going to bring things to a close. So, to summarize, when you think either about your career or life, what three actionable things would you like to leave the guests with? Three pearls of wisdom.
I think the first one is that self-control and happiness does not happen without self-awareness. So self-awareness is first. Figure out what is going on in your brain and give yourself some forgiveness that those filters don't make you a bad person. They exist because of life experiences from when you were 8 years old, 7 years old. So the key is how do we do that? The second is that self-regulation. Get yourself on a mental health self-care routine where you are calming that body down because stress is inflammatory and it leads to autoimmune diseases and lupus and problems controlling diabetes and cancer and all kinds of horrible diseases that you don't want. And you ultimately have control of keeping that body calm to try to prevent those things from happening. And then the third, I would say, is once you have those two things, you have more self control. And when you have more self control and wisdom, you have empathy and you have the ability to lead in better ways, whether it's leading your family, leading a Fortune 500 company, leading a small family business, leading a classroom. If you have those two things, you are a much better human for the other humans that you interact with.
So, what question would you like to leave for the next guest?
I think I would like to ask that person how much, we can't use Harold and Bob, but just how much does stress impact their ability to succeed or feel fulfillment? And what do they do about it to mitigate stress?
Thank you so much for coming on, Lisa.
Yeah.
Really
Thank you so
appreciate
much
it.
for having me. I enjoyed it.
Before we sign off, I'd like to invite you to my quick reflective practice called Pause, Reflect, Act. As your leadership coach, I'm here to help you translate today's insights into personal growth and your next steps. Answer the prompts that follow in your journal or notes. Alternatively, you can access my complimentary journal and self-coaching tool in the show notes, or scan the QR code you can see on screen now. Number 1, think of a recent moment when you reacted in a way that surprised you, where you later thought, why did I do that? What old associations might you have been pulling from? Number 2, Dr. Lisa Riegel spoke about stress and how it lives in the body before we've even been conscious of it. What does stress feel like in your body? And what does it look like to others? What's one physical reset practice you could commit to this week? Number 3, Dr. Lisa talks about being intentional about joy and experiences. What's one thing, big or small, you could say yes to in the next 30 days that would bring you genuine joy? If you'd like to be notified when the next episode drops, remember to subscribe. If you found this episode helpful, please share it with someone who might benefit. Finally, if any of these topics have sparked your interest and you'd like to work with me, you can apply for a free discovery call at estellereed.com. Let's see if we're a good fit. You'll also find plenty of free resources there. I'm Estelle Reed, executive coach, speaker, and best-selling author, and this has been the Optimizing Leader Brilliance podcast. Thanks for listening. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered professional advice. Please consult with a qualified professional for any specific advice related to your situation.